It's been a very exciting last couple weeks with Recon One, and if you've been following the channel, this is my 2021 Jeep Wrangler Willys that I got used and bone stock. And I'm building it up to be a hardcore rock crawler, and I'm doing it in stages. That way we can see how it performs at each stage and how much it costs along the way. Well, this last couple weeks, I had this over at Shift Autowerx, and well, they did some amazing work to this thing, and we didn't throw the bank at it this time. We actually used some used parts. And looking at the Jeep from the outside, it doesn't look like we did anything since the last time I showed this to you, but the upgrades we did are absolutely critical to getting out and getting after it. I'm actually going to Moab in like 6 days, and these upgrades are gonna serve me very well. We did a lot of focus on the drivetrain, and in the interior I did something that was fun, and I also did something that was very practical. And while doing that, I found something that the previous owner had done that I wasn't aware of. Now, before we dive in and I show you what I've been up to, I want to take a minute and invite you guys to go check out our website over at TrailRecon.com. If you're looking for wheels or tires or lift kits or some of the upgrades that we just did to Recon One, we've got you covered over there. We've got lots of stuff to outfit your vehicle for your next adventure. So after the video, go over the website, check it out, and see if there's something there for you. All right, let's dive in. Let me show you what we've been up to. So one of the things I knew when I got the Willys edition was that we were going to have a smaller axle in the front that was going to need to be either strengthened or replaced. Now ultimately this thing's going to be running on 40s, and I'm going to have some 1-ton axles on here. But in the interim, before we can go to 37s, we needed to do something with that M186 that was up front. And well, with the help of the guys over at Shift Autowerx, we found a used takeoff Rubicon front axle, the M210, which has a locker in it. Remember, we didn't have a locker in the front either. So we were able to do a direct swap with that. Now, there were a few things that we needed to do that I will talk through here in a second, but I also, since we were doing that, decided to go ahead and re-gear Recon One. Now, we're running 35s, and so I chose to go 488 gears. I didn't need to go that high. I could have gone with 456s. Remember, we were at 373 before. The minute I put these 35s on going up a hill, well, it was feeling it. And I know that in the near future, we're gonna go to 37s. These 35s aren't sticking around much longer, guys. They look so small with these fenders. But having that 488 gear should help manage those 37s, no problem, until we again progress further on. So let me show you how that axle and that gear install went. When you're looking for takeoff axles, there are plenty places to start, but don't overlook your local off-road shops. They often have sets sitting around from customers who upgraded to tons. Removing the factory axle is a straightforward process. I'm transferring my knuckles and the brakes today, but if you can find a complete Rubicon assembly, it makes this swap even faster. Once we had the axle out, I wanted to compare the Willys M186 with the Rubicon M210 side by side. I found a few things I didn't expect. I was aware that the M210 is about 1.5 inches wider overall, meaning the wheels will poke out about 3/4 of an inch further on each side. That makes the front track wider than the rear on Recon One, which is actually a benefit when you're navigating tight obstacles. It gives you a bit more breathing room for the rear to follow through. The center housing on the M210 is notably larger, but interestingly, which I didn't know, is the axle tubes are the same diameter on the M186. I'd always assumed that the Willys tubes were smaller, so the M186 might actually be a bit sturdier than I give it credit for. One thing to keep in mind, because the Rubicon axle is wider, my original tie rod and drag link won't work. The shop actually had a used set a few days ago, but they'd already hit the dumpster, so I went with a new factory set for now. I'll likely go aftermarket down the road, but these will do the job. If I were planning on keeping these axles forever, I'd swap in some chromoly shafts now while everything is apart, but honestly, for 35s and 37s, the stock Rubicon shafts are plenty stout. The guys at the shop made quick work of the 488 gear swap. They installed all new bearings and seals and watched the gear pattern closely. There's definitely an art to getting that shimmed correctly. To wrap it up, they wired the front lockers into my Mopar auxiliary switch, so engaging it on the trail is now just a one-button job. It is such a nice feeling knowing that I've got a solid axle up front now that I can rely on. And those 488 gears, let me tell you guys, Recon One cruises right along down the road, no problem. There's actually a hill near my house. And before, when I upgraded the 35-inch tires, it was struggling at 4th gear to get up the hill, and now it shifts into 5th and it's 6th gear by the time I'm at the top of the hill. So it's driving much better with this new gear ratio. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And that was not the only used thing that we installed while we were at Shift Autowerx. In fact, we upgraded the transfer case. So they had a used Rubicon transfer case that somebody had taken out of their Jeep because they installed an Atlas, which a very nice upgrade that maybe one day this will get. And so they were able to directly swap that transfer case right in. Let me show you how easy that process was, and we'll talk a little bit about why that's important. After the axle swap, we turned our attention to the transfer case. I'm swapping out the factory command track for a used Rock-Trac 4-to-1 unit out of a Rubicon. If you're running a Willys or a Sport, you likely have the 2.72-to-1 low range. And that's adequate for most trails, but moving to the 4-to-1 significantly increases the torque multiplication at the wheels. In the rocks, that lower gear is going to give you tractor-like control. It lets you crawl over obstacles with much more throttle precision instead of having to rely on momentum and bouncing your way up. Plus, these Rubicon transfer cases are known for being pretty bulletproof. The swap itself is straightforward since it's a direct bolt up to the transmission. The only minor hurdle we ran into was we had to use the yoke from my original transfer case to make sure it paired up correctly with my factory drive shafts. It's a simple fix for now, but since I'm planning on upgrading these drive shafts in the not too distant future, a new higher strength yoke will be back on the menu down the road. Combined with the new 488 gears, this setup puts Recon One in a completely different league for low range technical crawling. It's the kind of bang for your buck upgrade that you really feel the moment you shift into 4-low. Having that transfer case now is a big deal. I was just out in the desert kind of feeling things out, nothing crazy, but I was going down a hill and I shifted into 4-low, put it in 1st gear, and wow, the crawl ratio going down that hill now was so much better. This thing's going to perform very well out in Moab. I'm very happy to have the Rubicon transfer case in here. And I would argue now that we are at a point where we have now exceeded the capability that you would get from a Rubicon. I know we don't have a rear locker in there, but that limited slip differential is pretty amazing. And eventually we'll have a locker in there. But I think right now we are well beyond Jeep Rubicon status. Remember, we started out just this basic Willys. I'm pretty happy with it. Now, to get everything to work, I had to use my SuperChips programmer to tell it what gears I had and that I had a new 4-to-1 transfer case, and now everything works great. Now let's talk about some of the things I did to the interior, and that's something that I found that it wasn't expected. Now on the interior, there are 2 things that I focused on this last couple of weeks. One is I wanted to get some hard mounted comms. I've been using a handheld for a while, and handhelds are fine, but the problem is if you're out for multiple days, you gotta remember to charge it or you gotta bring extra batteries. Plus, having a home for it just isn't great. So I wanted to get rid of the handheld, and I went with a hard-mounted Midland GMRS radio. GMRS is gonna be fine because usually when I'm out with this Jeep, it's gonna be with other friends that are probably gonna have GMRS radios. And because this has the Mopar auxiliary kit, I was able to power up the radio right under the passenger footwell using the battery power cable. So that made it really easy. And then I routed the antenna up onto the hood. And this is kind of a normal setup that I've done multiple times, and I'm really happy with it. It works really well. It's very functional. This is gonna serve me well. I'm still debating on whether or not I'll do a ham setup. I may just carry a ham handheld for when I need it because it's not going to be very often. Honestly, The only time I really need ham is now when I'm out with Sean, because up in Canada, that's all they use. So when he and I are together, I've got ham in the Gladiator. So that's working well. The other thing that was bothering me about Recon One was, you know, I've got the small screen on the stereo here, and the speaker system is the base model speaker system, and I just wanted to get something that was a little better sounding. So I upgraded the speakers in the front, and I put some 6x9s in the rear. Now, upgrading the ones in the front is very easy to do. These little covers pop right off. You pull out that speaker. I've got the kickers, and I bought a little adapter. It plugs right in, no problem, and it sounds so much more crisp right up in the front. Now, I wanted to upgrade the speakers in the rear, and I actually found that you can get a template to cut a hole in there, which I was a little hesitant about, but it allowed me to mount two 6x9s up in the rear overhead. And let me tell you, it's a much deeper sound, a little bit better bass. Obviously, those speakers are only gonna get as much as they can from this head unit, so upgrading the stereo maybe in the future or adding an amplifier will really help power those speakers a little bit better. But right now, the clarity is much, much better. I wish I could let you guys listen to it, but for copyrights reasons, I can't do that. Now, when I was pulling everything out from underneath to wire up the radio, one of the things I noticed was there's this little black box down there that I wasn't aware of. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's one of those dealer installed GPS trackers that they charge you like $1,000 for as an upfit when you buy the vehicle. The truth is they install those things so they could track the vehicles, and then they just transfer the cost over to the person buying the vehicle. I was able to pull that out. That's nice. I don't even know if the thing was active or not, but it's no longer in my Jeep. And also what I noticed was there were two speaker wires up under the footwell that were tapped into the current speakers. So it's funny that I had planned on replacing these front tweeters and the rear 6x9s, and these speakers down here below, they've already been upgraded. That was pretty interesting. I didn't even think about upgrading those now because those are a little bit cumbersome. You actually have to pull the dash apart. But I took a hard look under there. I'm like, oh yeah, those are aftermarket speakers. So now I have all 6 aftermarket speakers in here, and it sounds pretty great. So with all these upgrades over the last 2 weeks, it didn't really transform the outward appearance of the Jeep. Sometimes you have to focus on the things that are functional and not flashy. And I am very happy with all of these upgrades. It's gonna make going out to Moab very nice. I'm gonna be spending 5 days out in Moab, and I will be filming, and I will be with some good friends that you know well. And they're all on 37s and 40s, and I'm gonna be on 35s. I think I'm gonna be just fine. I'm gonna be putting my driving skills to the test, but we've got the clearance and we've got the capability, having that front locker. I think we're gonna be just fine. It'll be a lot of fun out there. Now, I've got a few upgrades here in the garage that I still need to get to, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna get to them before I leave for Moab, so that'll give us something to do when we get back. And I've got a very long list of upgrades that are still to come as we continue stage by stage with Recon One. Let me know down in the comments, guys, what you think I should do next to this Jeep. Obviously, we're gonna do some more testing, but what are some of the next upgrades that should be high priority on my list? I'd love to hear what you think. I hope you've enjoyed hanging out in the garage with me. More to come on Recon One. Until next time, safe travels.